Welcome to the Overcome Adversity podcast. I'm your host, Michael Allison. Today's guest is Mr. Nate James. He's a hip hop artist, vocalist, vocal trainer, speaker, and writer. I also heard he was a poet too as well. Hey man, welcome to the show, bro.
Thank you so much, man. I'm very happy to be here.
Absolutely, man. James, man, I learned a lot about you from reading your story, your bio, some things that you've been through, man. And honestly, when I read it, you always hear people, if you was to look at some statistics, they probably shouldn't be here or been through some things, right? And
100%.
you're a testament to that, man. Can you tell us a little bit about who you are, man? Some things that you've been doing and what you've been up to, so we get into your story.
Yeah, definitely. Well, like you said, it's definitely a long list of stuff. So I'll try to keep the summary short. But yeah, my life began in Southern California, in Orange County near Huntington Beach. And up until the time I was probably 9, 10 years old, I grew up in a very, very abusive household, specifically with my biological father, alcoholic, drug addict, list goes on,
Right.
And then around 9 years old, we moved out to Colorado, actually to escape him, and he followed us out there.
Oh, wow.
So he came out, moved out there, and it continued even more. Now my mom, of course, was at this point single mom. So she, it was difficult because she had to try to fill the role of both mother and father. And it's one thing, like my sister did a little better than we did because she had her mom, but for boys, as I'm sure you'll agree, we need our dads.
Right.
And so it's hard. I was definitely in and out of trouble at school a lot, almost got suspended multiple times. It's a miracle I wasn't suspended or even expelled. But and then eventually she remarried, and the man's incredible. And it was during that time I started finding a love for hip hop. And the artists who I was listening to, they really were like helping me work through stuff that I hadn't yet worked through. And I didn't even know music could do that at the time. I was super sheltered. I only grew up listening to I was only allowed to listen to country and gospel stuff and which is great. It's no hate to those genres. Love that. But never any hip hop, never any rock, metal, any stuff like that. And so when I came across it and the more real, lyrics, I found myself healing in a way I'd never had. And it was then that I realized I wanted to try to do that for other people. So that was I started writing music for, several years before I released anything, but then I released my first song, I think it was September 1st of 2020, and kept doing it since.
Wow, man. So thank you for giving us the backstory to where you're at now today, man. I think it's incredible to develop that amount of resilience, because I do agree with you that a father should be in his son's life, right? And to escape that, but knowing that someone should love you or care about you and now they're abusing you is it develops a barrier that within that relationship, right? So
Exactly.
I want to touch on something, man. If you could tell us a little bit about having that experience and you finding your connection for music. Did you find that you developed some form of a resilience in regards to building up these types of things and these types of maybe feelings and stuff like that, to the point where this was the escape for you?
Definitely. I think that probably the easiest way I could say it is that music was the one thing that stayed constant. It didn't leave. It didn't hit back.
Right.
It didn't, it didn't degrade me. It didn't, so I felt like I almost started attaching personhood to the music that I would listen to, because if I could have a relationship with the words I was hearing that were building me up, then maybe that could replace the relationships that weren't in my life. And it's funny, one of my favorite artists is NF, and he has a lyric that says, "Music has raised me more than my parents did."
Wow.
And while my mom was incredible, that's one thing I can say a lot of people can't say. A lot of people grew up without either or both being bad. My mom's amazing, still is amazing, always had her. So that was great. But as far as fatherhood, music definitely replaced that for me. And As far as building up that resilience, I found that, and obviously this isn't healthy, but the easiest way to react is to just shut my emotions off. Because if I don't have emotions, then my emotions can't be hurt. So been really working through that, working on building back to where I can actually feel things, and it is working. It really has been. The girl who I'm with, I just got married December 9th
Congrats,
of
man.
this last
Congrats.
year. Thank you, man. It's a huge moment for me because there's a lot of walls of trust there that she really had to break through because I've been trained my whole life that you let someone get emotionally intimate with you and they leave, you know? And so the fact that she has really proven to me it's not going to happen changed everything. And so it's been a lot of healing.
Let me ask you this. I found that, so I grew up in Jamaica, raised in Miami, Florida. We moved around a lot. And adapting to different environments was often a challenge for me. And you mentioned that you start off in California, you guys went out to Colorado, and you having different things going on. So I imagine schools, friends, family, housing, all of these different things are changing up for you. How did you adjust to that? And did any of that affect you growing up as a teenager or to even being an adult as well?
Definitely. The nice thing about school is that I was homeschooled the majority of my life. And so that was something that made like moving a little easier because, even though I had friends at church, like we've always been active at church and we would go to like these homeschool enrichment academies, like 1 day a week stuff, so I still knew people, I was still social, but school, we were able to kind of uproot a little easier. So that part of it wasn't as difficult as others. But as far as leaving family behind and leaving, because like my whole family was in California at that time, like everyone from both sides. And so we moved out to Colorado. We don't know anybody out there, like nobody. And I'm a very social being. And so when we got there, I was like, and so it was crazy because just on a humorous level, that means, of course, I'm getting into way more mischief because I'm bored. And on the more serious side, it felt more isolating, because at least when you're dealing with something and you have your whole family there, well, at least the family's there,
Right.
We get out there, changes everything. Now, luckily, the majority of our family actually ended up moving out to Colorado too, then within the next probably 3 years after us getting there. So that ended up getting better. But yeah, that was the real change. The other change is I'm definitely built more for Colorado climate. I'm warm-blooded. I have, I'm a Viking at heart. I have North ancestry. I want the cold, bro. I want like ice, you know what I'm saying? So it was nice getting out there to Tennessee, and it's like heat. It's like,
So let's hop into a little bit around the music industry. So when you decided to say I'm going to step into music, how did that start for you? Did you start off saying I'm going to start writing, I'm going to start listening to music, I'm going to start doing some talent shows, I'm just going to get on YouTube and blow up on social media? What was your path to say, like, I could do this, develop the confidence to say I could do this? What was your path?
Well, so my whole life since I was very little, my mom's always been into literature and English and stuff. So part of our assignments every week is like, and most people who I tell this, they're like, what, you had to do this? Because they didn't have to. I had to write a poem a week and it had to be good. And it was part of my grade. So from the time I was like 6 years old, I was trying to master rhyme schemes and coming up with like, okay, I could say this, but how can I say it more cleverly? How can I really hit someone? And so by the time I was probably 12, 13, it was getting to the point where my mom was like, okay, you got to start like submitting these to contests and stuff. So I started submitting them to contests and started winning like each one I submitted to. And then once hip hop finally came into my life and I was listening to it, and I've always also had a pretty good memory. So I would memorize the raps. And I still remember the first time I was in the car, I was with my brother and my mom, and a song was on. Don't even remember which song it was, but I was just laying it down. Like I knew every word. I was flowing with it. And they were like, you actually can do this, like, you know. And so it was in that moment that I realized, wait a minute, I love poetry and I love rap, and I think I could make some rap music. And so then I started taking pen to pad and just writing stuff, and I kept all of it. I will never show a living soul because it sucked. it was terrible. And the good thing was I could see at the time I should not release this. So that's one nice thing about my upbringing, is that a lot of people have like their SoundCloud stuff that they're like, don't ever go listen to that because it sounds horrible. So luckily I don't have that. But yeah, and then the moment when I started taking it seriously was I was listening to a song. It was actually an NS song. I think it was the song Mansion. And it was really hitting me. And I was like, man, I'm learning about myself. And then in that moment, I was like, yeah, I want to do that for other people. I really want to give people those moments too. So yeah, then I started doing that. And then to add on to that, I had always, whether it was in school, the 1 day a week stuff or something, we would always get in these circles where it wasn't really a rap battle necessarily, but it was like kind of dissing each other,
Yeah.
And I gained a reputation that I could not, like, I didn't lose a single one my entire years at school, and everyone knew, like, don't do it. And so then I realized, I was like, wait a minute. So now I could start doing rap battles with people. And so I started doing them, and I started winning every one that I did, just in circles with friends, nothing like no contests or anything. And then, yeah, from there, it was just performing everywhere I could, talent shows and stuff like you had mentioned. And I wasn't receiving any negative feedback. And there were a lot of people who definitely could have if they wanted to. A lot of people who were enemies of mine who definitely would have loved to tear me down, but they knew if they bring it up, they're going to get laughed at, because it's like, why would you hate? It's good. So I think that was what built my confidence to eventually release my first song. I was like, okay, I think enough people like this. And lo and behold, I got like, I think 2,000 streams in the first week or two, which for your first song ever is pretty big.
Right.
Yeah, and that was what convinced me I could do it.
So let me ask you this: when you decided to get into the music industry, did you say, did you create like a blueprint in regards to saying, I want to start off here, but eventually get signed to a label, or I'm going to stay independent? Or did you like come up with a list and say, hey, I want to collaborate with these types of people or work with any of these people within the industry?
Definitely. As a matter of fact, there's a note on my phone in the notes app that has a list of all the people who I want to make a song with by the time I'm a certain size. But it's funny because I didn't really have a blueprint until like this year, as far as a specific schedule. Like by the end of the year, I will be here. The last 3 years have really, for me, been about building a catalog and then networking with as many people in the industry as possible, because I realized something that I learned from a couple mentors is that if you build relationships with people who can really help you grow, then by the time you're actually ready to grow, it's going to go 10 times faster. So by the time when I started, I think I was 17 years old when I released my first song. And I was like, yeah, I just want to tour the world. I want to be the biggest star ever. And as time has evolved, and now I have a more specific plan. Like back then, I would have told you, yeah, I want to get signed to a label. I had Capitol Records in mind, or Capitol, because they signed NF. I had Atlantic in mind because they signed Skillet, and I had Interscope because Interscope is Interscope. And since then, I've definitely decided I want to remain independent, because I definitely think I can do it. I think I've proven to myself that I can. So, yeah.
Nice, man. So you've mentioned some things that I think really resonates when it comes to like music for me. So when I listen to music, it has to like touch my soul. It has to connect with me in regards to me to listen to it for more than 30 seconds, right? So
right.
When you're creating your music and you're getting creative, can you tell us a little bit about what is it creatively when you're preparing and putting something together in regards to your story creation and your connection to your audience and to your listeners?
Yeah. So it's funny because my process is very different than most people. A lot of people, like, they sit there, they listen to the beat over and over again, and then they write lyrics for it. I basically, and I do that sometimes too. It's very mixed, but what usually happens is I'll sit there and I'll get an idea for the lyrics before anything else. I'll put it all out, and I have note after note after note that's just full of lyrics. And then what I do is I listen through the beats and I see, okay, which of these lyrics can I flow over this beat? Which one makes sense to those? And then I do that matching game. Because to me, it's like you said, I think lyrics are most important. So yes, if I hear a beat and I'm like, oh, that's a hit, then I'll write something for it. But most of the time, lyrics come way before anything else because I really want people to be able to connect with it. And I've definitely released songs that are just there to be a vibe or just there to like kind of be lyrical and just punchline stuff. That's what being a rapper is. But it's usually lyrics first for me in the process. And I really try and sit there and think, okay, what would 10-year-old me, if this was coming through his headphones, what would he need to hear right now? And then I write that out.
You mentioned earlier that when you first started in the car, you started rapping to what you heard, right? And then your family was like, I think we're onto something here. Can you tell us a little bit about your support system in regards to like pursuing your dreams now? So can you tell us a little bit about your siblings? Can you tell us a little bit about your mom or your stepdad or like your group of circle or your friends that's in your camp that's like pushing for you, supporting for you, and rooting for you? Can you tell us how big of an influence these people are for you?
Definitely. And you know, that's actually one of the funniest parts of the story because in the very beginning, nobody actually wanted me to really pursue it. Like my parents were like, it was kind of like I don't know, a little trick I could show off. Like, oh yeah, our son can rap fast. Check this out, it's so cool. But when I started saying like, you know, mom and dad, I think I might actually want to be an artist. Like, I think I might want to release some stuff. They were like, whoa, you have a career you want to follow. You're going to college, all this stuff. No, you're not doing that. And funny enough, rap actually became outlawed in our house for about probably a year, 2 years. Like we weren't allowed to even listen to it.
Oh, wow.
Because basically what they had said was, and of course, now there's been a character arc and they love it now. But at the time they were like, we don't like the attitude that it's fostering in you boys and we don't like and stuff. And we at the time were like, what? you know, attitude. And so, and of course, what they said was, well, that proves it. You just acted defiant. We were like, come on. So, I actually still remember the first time I ever directly disobeyed my parents and rebelled was when NF released The Search. I went downstairs, I put my headphones on, and I stood by the door so I could watch and I could see like, is dad coming? And I put on my headphones, I listened to the whole thing. And they found out later. I think they looked at the YouTube history or something and saw it. And when they confronted me about it, I was like, guys, come on, please. And I think I was old enough at the time that they were like, okay, yes, that's fine. I guess you can listen to it. So it eventually was fine. And then when they actually read what I was writing, they were like, okay, this is wholesome. You go ahead. So parents are now completely on board. They listen to everything I release. They're very, very supportive. Great support group there. My siblings love it. My little sister's in theater, and she's very, very good. And so anytime I release a song, I can look at my statistics and I see like the 12 to 15-year-old girl diagnostic. I know I heard, you know, I was like, I know that's really just her showing her friends. And then my brother, same way, he's very supportive of it too. And it's funny because he and I butt heads a lot. So he's an example of somebody who, if my song sucked, he would tell me. Mm-hmm. And he hasn't really ever. So he's always been supportive of that. The one duo of people who still can't stand it is my grandparents. They wish I would just stop it completely. But, you know, it is what it is. And even if I didn't have anybody supporting it, I would still do it because I know it's the right thing to do. So But yeah, that's what my support system looks like now. And my wife is completely on board too. She loves it. She's been a huge rap fan for years. And it was one of the first things that she actually really liked about what I do. So yeah, so it's a good support group now.
Nate, man, for the listeners that's listening right now, whether it's music or something else, can you give some advice or offer some in regards to, you face some challenges along the way, right, to stay in the field that you're in, but you still pursued it no matter what someone said. For that
Yeah.
person that's listening right now that has like doubts in pursuing their goals and their dreams, what is it that you would say to them?
Well, I would say that the only way to ensure 100% that you will fail is to give up. That is literally, like, think about it. It is the only way that you can 100% guarantee you will not achieve it. Even if you have to take a crazy risk to get there and there is a chance you will fail, the chance of losing will always be higher if you give up. So to me, I would rather take any risk. I don't care if it's a 1% chance of winning. That's still better than giving up. So what I would tell everyone is, if you're really struggling, if maybe you don't have that support group and you feel alone, or maybe you don't have the resources for it, whether that's time, money, energy, whatever, if you want it bad enough and this is truly, this is what I'm meant to do, then just keep doing it, because it's going to get rough. It's going to get hard. When I look back, there were genuinely nights where I can say I had very serious considerations of ending it all. Mm-hmm. Like, I really did. When things got at its darkest, I had weapons in the room that were very easy to reach out and grab, and it was the easy way out. But you can't do that. If you give up, that's the instant way to fail. My one of my favorite songs ever. It's actually funny because it's from a children's movie. If any of you have seen Frozen 2, you know the song "Do the Next Right Thing." Mm-hmm. And the whole idea is, you can't see the future. You don't know if everything's going to fail and you're going to screw it up. So all you can do is look right here, right now, this step, figure out what the right thing is, and just make that step, one after the other. And eventually, you're going to get to that future that was unsure back here. So I think that's what I'd have to say. And then what I also would say too is that, I've recently adopted the ideas of the teachings of Stoicism. And one of the things that they teach, the Stoic philosopher Epictetus once said, it's not what happens to you, it's how you react to it that matters. And so if you can really master your mind, and you can truly say, I don't care what happens, I know what I have to eat. I don't care if I have to sleep in a box under a bridge. If it means I can keep doing what I know I have to do, and you do not let the externals affect you, you're unstoppable. So all that wrapped up, all that summed up, if you give up, that's the only way that you will fail. It's literally the only way you will fail, is if you give up. So you can't. If you want it bad enough, you can't give up.
Thank you for that, man. I want to hop into something that you had shared with us to get started, and you kind of alluded to something earlier too, but a lot of people get into like very dark places and they kind of like get stuck in there, and they go through phases of like anger, depression, PTSD. And from reading your bio and stuff like that, I know that you're an advocate for like mental health and stuff like that now. Can you tell us a little bit about some of the challenges that you did face while you was in that funk or in that space? And what were some things that you had to do to apply to your life to even get out of that, man?
Absolutely, man. This is something I'm very, very passionate about. So first and foremost, even if this is the only thing y'all hear from me, forget the meds. They're not the answer. Something that, it is a temporary answer. If you go into a battle and you see your opponent and you decide, I'm going to throw a rock and run, you might miss him for the moment, but he's still waiting for you there. If you want something to quiet your demons, they're still there and they're waiting for when that quiet goes away. You have to fight them and overcome them, put them under your dominion. Mm-hmm. So that's the first thing I would say. is forget the meds. I can look at, PTSD. I suffer from Tourette syndrome. I've never been diagnosed with ADHD, but every boy is kind of wired that way, blah, 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 all over the place. You know, all these things, one after the other, I've done it completely naturally. So you can do it. So that's the very first thing I just want to throw out there. Forget the meds. They don't help. Second of all, as far as like literally specifically what I've dealt with, because of the abuse in my childhood, it basically triggered my brain to be in a constant state of fight or flight.
Mm-hmm.
And the way that the doctors described it is that your brain is only supposed to be in fight or flight for a few seconds, because it makes the decision, are you going to run or are you going to fight? And then, right?
All right.
And then the physical, not even the emotional, but the physical response of fight or flight is over. Well, the doctors estimate that my brain was in a continual state of fight or flight for likely several years, which means that my brain is constantly firing. All the neurons are going at a ridiculous speed, So I dealt with insomnia. I cannot sleep for the life of me. Even today, I sleep very, very little. It manifested itself. We think it's what caused my Tourette syndrome, which for those of you who don't know, it's basically, if you've seen someone like the extreme versions, they have these weird like facial twitches and like stuff going on, or sometimes it's vocal. They'll like have to say a phrase over and over again. Right. Mine has gotten better because I've learned a lot of techniques over the years to quiet them a little bit more, but you'll still see like blinking irregularities, certain things with me, like it's bad. It's not fun. And then of course, your copy and paste PTSD from childhood, and then the depression that I faced as well. And all those things together, again, like you said before, statistically, what people do is they use that as an excuse, right? It's like, well, I feel this way, therefore no one would blame me if I just gave up, if I just sat here and decided not to go any further. Well, for me, I decided, well, if I simply cannot sleep, I may as well write a song. And then typically, once I got that song out, I felt, you know what? I was productive. I felt fulfilled. And that piece sometimes actually helps me get to sleep quicker then. When I thought about my PTSD and the depression I was facing, I was like, man, I feel like in moments when I was feeling that, I'd be like, man, I feel so terrible right now. Like, I just want to go curl up. But then I was like, wait a minute, I can use this moment of feeling this way to create some really, really emotional content, like some lyrics that are really going to hit. And so now it's funny because I've again assigned personhood to each of these things, because if you can externalize it, you can fight it better. And so when I start getting in that headspace, I now have the literal response of, you're back. Good, let's make a song. Because as soon as I'm feeling that, it's under my dominion. I decided I control you, you don't control me. And so now I would never take meds to make that go away, because it's one of my greatest tools. It appears, yeah, it doesn't feel good, but I create something beautiful. And then when it goes away, I can look back on that thing and think, man, I never would have made that if I didn't feel that way. So I think that my advice to everyone, I assume there are a lot of people watching this who probably experience depression, anxiety, PTSD of various kinds, and maybe even legit health, mental disorders like even Tourette's, or maybe on the autism spectrum, Asperger's, like all these different things. Take your weakness and convert it into a strength. Because people always say your greatest strength when turned on its back is your greatest weakness. Well, I really like to say your greatest weakness, if you can turn it on its back, can become your greatest strength. So for me, I took something that when I look at my peers, a lot of my peers who are dealing with this, and they really are living in pathetic, awful states of life. And I'm like, you guys, like, I feel it. I get it. I know what you're feeling. But if you let it control you, then you are a slave to your own mind. And that is a horrible place to be. And so it again goes back to that whole idea of How you react to it is what matters. So I would tell the listeners, if you're experiencing something in your life, it's going to suck. It's not going to make it feel better necessarily to do this in the moment. But if you can take whatever you're experiencing and force it to work for you, make it a slave for you instead of you being a slave to it, that is the most productive thing that you can do with it. Because again, it's one of those things where, like, if you have depression, you have PTSD, like, I'm sorry, but that's probably not going away completely. Like, it's a part of you now. So for me, when I realized, okay, these voices aren't going away, I realized, okay, they're not going away. They're going to be here. So what's the most productive I can be with this? What's my reality that I can craft? So forget the meds and make your problems work for you.
Definitely, man. That's one way to conquer all of these challenges and adversity. I I think you have a deep story, man, that resonates with people. And from like reading some more stuff about you, you have a connection to your faith and your belief. Can you talk about how important that is in your life now or in your relationships? How you go through your music, or whenever you're preparing, or whenever you're just doing business and things like that, man? How much has your faith or your belief has inspired you or empowered you to do what you do now?
Yeah, man, that's, it's the biggest part of who I am, honestly. It's interesting because I would not classify my music as Christian rap
Hmm.
or Christian hip hop. I don't belong to that world. Um, but I am definitely a Christian who makes music. And so it's something that, like, people always say, I hear a lot of Christians say, Jesus is the center of my life. Well, I take that a step further, because Jesus isn't just the center of my life that everything revolves around. He is my life. If
Hmm.
it was not for my faith, I genuinely believe I would not be here right now. And if I was, it would be in a far worse place. It would be a far worse state, a far worse version of who I am. Um, and, you know, Jesus says in the Bible that his yoke is easy and his burden is light. And I remember being young and thinking, how in the world can that possibly be true? I'm a Christian. Jesus is in my heart. I understand this. Why in the world is everything that could possibly go wrong in my life going wrong? Did he lie? Like what gives? And that was when I realized that if you have hope of an eternity, a never ending period of time, of peace, true joy, and fulfillment, then how in the world can this finite world dampen that? How can that actually truly take away from anything? And I guess that's, I'm definitely a more logical being than emotional being. So maybe that's just rationalization. But that really began to shape who I am, because I realized, and that's actually part of what thrusted me then into Stoicism, is the idea that, well, okay, if I know for a fact that I am going somewhere after this life where there is no pain, there's no sadness, none of this stuff, then it doesn't, it doesn't ultimately matter. What I'm experiencing right now, I'm not even going to remember it one day, because I'm going to be so enthralled by the glory that's around me. So the best thing I can do right now is make the best of it, take it, make it work for me. And so it's definitely, it's so hard because there's so many assumptions that come along when you say, oh yeah, I'm a Christian. There's a lot of people who say, okay, so you believe this and you hate this group of people and you love this group of people, you vote this way and you don't vote that way. And I'm like, oh, because I'm like, no, that's not what the gospel is. And so that's something that I always try to tell people is, I'm like, look, there are all these denominations, all these people trying to say all these different things, but if you take God at his word and you take what he says, not what anyone else says. I mean, plenty of people who run away from the church because of people in the church, and I think that's the saddest thing ever, because the people should not define God. God should define God.
All right.
And so when you really embed yourself in his word, it's life changing. And I'm definitely evidence of that. I think I'd be a very different person right now if it wasn't for my faith. So it may not be what I rap about, it may not be, what my music is about, but as far as what I speak and write about, that actually makes up the majority of what I speak and write about. I actually was just in New Orleans for a week, speaking 4 times for a church and creating content with a guy who has a YouTube channel called Topical Bible Studies, where we were just filming content for that. So even though it's not a part of my music, it's a very, very big part of my life, just creating stuff to teach people about that. So yeah, faith is, it's not just a big part of my life. It is my life. And I think that's the main reason why I'm not just here, but I'm the healthy version of myself that I am now.
Absolutely. How important has mentorship been in your life, man?
I could not, man, that's another thing that if it wasn't for the mentors in my life, I would definitely be a lot less healthy than I am right now. And that's honestly, as far as like personal mentors as well as business mentors. I've learned a lot from a lot of people in the music industry probably know who Rob Level is. He has a YouTube channel called Smart Rapper where he teaches marketing and really a bunch of stuff that literally, I mean, it's in the name, just to make you a smarter artist. And then I joined his program and have spoken one-on-one with him a lot. And so without him, I wouldn't have a clue how to market what I'm doing today. And because of him, I know how to, and I've seen a lot of growth. So he changed my life completely. And then as far as personally, I really have a lot. There's a lot of guys I could mention, but there's a man actually from my church back home named Chuck who just completely changed my life. He helps me remain accountable. He's an accountability partner. And we call regularly and we update about life. And I ask him questions like, man, I've never faced this before. Like, what do I do? And he's like, all right, here's what I think you should do. And he hasn't let me down yet. So, mentorship is a huge deal. I always tell people, I'm like, if you're trying to do it alone, for like the idea of, oh yeah, I'm self-made, I built this myself, I didn't have help from anybody. It's like, you can still be self-made. You can still be the one who got yourself there with God's help, but like, you're not going to be healthy and happy if you don't have people helping you who've already done it. And so huge part of my life, man. Huge. I love my mentors. They changed everything.
I agree with you, man. I think community is one of the biggest things that helps you get across that finish line, man. And if you are a believer, it says that God created us for community. So that's what it is for me.
Amen.
Can you uh can you tell me how do you prioritize like your self-care and your mental well-being in regards to like how you go about your daily life? And I think it's important for people to understand like what are some practices and things that people that are on a journey, that are on a path towards greatness and success, what are some things that they're doing? And I say that and I ask you that because I find that whenever I work with people or I see people, they do a lot of procrastinating, they do a lot of wasting time. They find themselves in situations that are out of alignment with whatever their destination or their goals should be, man.
Yeah. Man, there's so many directions that I could go with that. But I think that honestly, a huge part of it is if you start your day and end your day with, as far as personal development, like I start every morning with a prayer. I pray for a blessing on the day and anything else that's on my mind. And I'm not great about this habit, but I try to read at least a chapter out of the Bible every morning, because I found that if I can align my energy with something that is bigger than myself at the very start of the day, because how you wake up, like I don't know if you've ever woken up with an alarm clock that is a song and then the song is stuck in your head for the rest of the day. I think it's the same way with if you pray, if this is the very first thing that as your brain is slowly, I don't know, I'm not a morning guy, so it takes a while for my brain to kickstart. And so if the first thing that my brain is taking in is something based on something bigger than myself, chances are rest of the day is going to be centered that way too. And then same thing with ending the day. I try, and this is something that my wife and I have tried to get in the habit of, is actually praying together every night. Because I think that spirit, that's wonderful, man. I love that because, you know, people always talk about emotional and physical intimacy, but they forget sometimes the spiritual intimacy because, you know, you're walking together towards God. So that's huge. That's important. So, you know, I always tell people, I was like, look, if you start and end your day in a way that is spiritual, chances are your day is going to be more spiritual. And then as far as, you know, other things that help, I've gotten in the habit too. I'm trying to reach the point where I'm doing 1,000 push-ups a day. Just because I firmly believe that a disciplined body is a disciplined mind. Now I have a long way to go. I started like a month ago with 50 push-ups before bed, and I'm just adding to that number, and then I'll add other periods of the day. So I would tell people too that, you know, you don't have to be a gym rat or a gym bro to have a disciplined body. You know, my brother's a good example of somebody who he works out like all the time. It's like he loves the culture and he loves all that, and I'm like, I think I'm good. You know, I'm not really that way. But I did find that once I started running, and I hate running with a passion, but I decided, I was like, I'm going to run because I'm going to prove to myself that I can do something I hate. And I got to the point where I was running a 5K every night, 5 nights a week for an entire semester. So that is, you know, over 15 miles a week. So, and once I proved I could do that, again, the translation then is mentally, I'm like, okay, so anything that hits me in life that I don't like, I can overcome it, because I knew in my body, which is physical immediate pain, even though I feel this, I'm not allowing myself to stop. So that's the second thing I would tell people. It's like, get some activity in your life. And then lastly, just be productive. Something that kills me at the end of a day is if I haven't accomplished something that day, I'm like, oh, come on. I only have a certain number of days I'm allotted here. And if I go a day without accomplishing something, that's embarrassing. Like, really, time is so valuable. There are people dying right now wishing they had more days. I have days and I'm throwing them away. So I cut out a lot of things. Like, I used to play video games decently. I was never a gamer, but I played them, you know, a few hours a day at the end of the day. And I haven't done that in a really long time because, and it's nothing against that. You know, a lot of people do that. A lot of people make money doing that. So I don't want any listeners to think I'm condemning that. But for me personally, I realized that at the end of those hours, I would get up and I felt bad about myself because these were hours in which I hadn't accomplished anything. I hadn't learned anything. I hadn't grown relationships. I mean, maybe I got on a headset with people, but we all know what that turns into. That's not growing with anybody. So I basically just realized, man, this is kind of sucking away life. And I'll still do it every now and then. I'll still throw on a headset to reconnect with the boys a little bit. So there's nothing against that. And there's nothing against relaxation. Like, that can be productive sometimes. If you've had a week and you need a day to just relax, I actually think that can be productive. But I would say find something to accomplish every single day. If you do those 3 things, be spiritually minded, work on your body, and accomplish something, you're going to get better. You're going to feel better about yourself.
Definitely, man. Thank you for that, man. Before we get out of here, man, from your story and the journey that you've been on, what are some lessons and some key takeaways that you would like to share with our audience, man?
You know, man, there's so many things I would love to say right now, but I know we don't got all the time in the world. Just please, y'all, I beg of you not to give up. This world is so full of people who are trapped in the slave mind, who are trapped in their own minds. Your mind is ironically the one thing you can control in this whole world. You can't control the people around you. Maybe you have that image of that, or that little facade of like, oh yeah, I'm bigger than that person, so I can tell them what to do. You know, I fell into that when I was young. I was the big kid in class. But then you realize there's the teachers, there's the authority over you. You do something. Yeah, you might have done that, but now you're in trouble. So the only thing in this whole world that you can control is your mind. So I just want to implore the audience, implore all of you watching, do not let your own mind control you. That's the quickest way that you will fail. And it's going to take time. Sometimes you have to pick one part of it to hone in on that depression and really focus on it. Start making it work for you. Work on your body, because the better you feel yourself, the less that'll have a hold in your life. Start praying more. Go to church. Good grief, go to church. Get in church, people. It'll do wonders for you. Start focusing on things that aren't selfish. Control your own mind. You know, there's actually a passage in scripture that says we must take captive every thought and make it obedient to the will of Christ. And I love that idea, because as soon as you have control of this, everything else is going to get a whole lot easier. So I just want to implore the audience, you know, if you want to achieve your dreams, control this. If you want to feel happy, control this. It all comes down to what's inside here. Don't let it rule you. You rule over it.
Nate, thank you, man, for being a guest on Overcoming Adversity podcast. It's been a pleasure to have you here, man, to hear your story and hear your words of inspiration, bro. How can people get a hold of you, man, and reach out to you?
Probably the quickest way that you could do that is send me a DM on my Instagram, which is I am Nate James. Go ahead and follow me there. Even if you just type in Nate James Music, should show up there. And send me a DM. I check every DM. I do not leave anybody on red. I will respond to you. Or you can send me an email at info@iamnatejames.com. Be looking January 12th. I have a song releasing featuring Rick Ross, believe it or not. So be ready for that, and be ready for a lot of music this year. I got 21 releases planned before the end of the year. So it's going to be a big year. And yeah, let me know if you want me on your podcast. Let me know if you want me to perform a show, you want to do a feature with me. I'm open to working with anybody. Let me know.
Well, James, man, congratulations on all your success, man. I look forward to what 2024 has for you, man. It's been a pleasure, brother, man. Thank you, man. And nothing but God bless to you, man.
Thank you so much, man. God bless you too.
All right, man.
Can't complain at all. Couple dollars in my pocket, no income and go. Been working on my body, getting healthier. Thank God for clarity.